theory and practice have shown us that 3 or 4 is always more than 2, and this applies for valves in combustion engines as well. Engineers try to keep their engines as simple as possible for the lowest friction losses, but there is a certain limit when the efficiency decreases. In the simplest engine, there is a single inlet valve for air and fuel intake, and a single exhaust valve for the burnt mixture escape. This was enough for most engines, but in 1910, the Isotaf-Rashini Typo KM had, as the world's first car, a 4-valve per cylinder engine, a 10.6-liter inline-4. Yet in 1912, the very first 4-valve twin-cam engine came alive in Grand Prix racing by Peugeot. It was the L76 model, and first featured a desmodromic system, later to be replaced by valve springs. It managed to have a 65% power denser engine than its closest competitor, a 14-liter Fiat S76, while having half of the cylinder volume. More brands started experimenting with the twin-cam multi-valve design, such as Alfa Romeo, with a 1914 GP car having 88 horsepower 4.5 liter. However, the project was cancelled and the engine later modified in 1921, now with 102 horsepower, and soon after using the concept in road cars like the Alfa Romeo 6C, where a twin-cam engine made at least 20% more power than a single cam. There is simply more air coming into the engine, and that outbalanced the added complexity to the engine. Besides the more valve area, the valves now could be smaller, lowering reciprocating mass and making the engine rev higher more freely. The new technology quickly caught on, and not only on overhead valve heads like Bugatti, Alfa Romeo or Bentley, but it was an interesting way to solve bad breathing flatheads by Stutz or Pierce Arrow. In the 1920s and 1930s, the 4-valve setup became the standard used by many manufacturers with overhead cam engines, and it came already in 1921. The very first 5-valve engine was developed by Peugeot with the help of a third cam. Is there any real reason to go for 5 valves per cylinder? Well, 4 valves use about 68% of the bore width, which is up 18% compared to a 2-valve setup. That is a huge airflow increase, but there is not such a big difference between a 4 and 5-valve configuration as there is between a 2-valve and 3 or 4. In fact, the total valve area is about the same, but it has other benefits. More valves means less weight per valve, increasing the rev range ability. Ferrari did a clever thing in the F355, where 2 outer valves opened 10 degrees earlier than the third intake valve, creating a swirl effect, making an even better air-fuel mixture. Many engine makers worked with the 5-valve head and created some cool engines with it. The largest adopters of the technology were definitely Yamaha and Audi. The first ever production car was the Mitsubishi Minica Dangan ZZ, with 15 valves for all its 3 cylinders in 1989, a year after the 1988 Audi's experimental 25-valve 200 turbo quattro engine. Yamaha developed the 5-valve head for the Silvertop and Blacktop 4AG engines, later also for many F1 engines in its history: OX88 V8, OX99 V12, OX10 and OX11 V10s, with many motorcycle engines we cannot forget. Those were thumpers like YZ250F and 450F, TDM and TRX2 bangers, and 4-cylinder FZ750 and 1000cc. all under the Yamaha Genesis engine lineup. Volkswagen and Audi's 5-valve per cylinder engines are some of the loveliest from the Volkswagen group. The design was shared across the lineup, up from 4 cylinders like the beloved 1.8 T20 valve through V6s like 2.4, 2.8, 3 liter or 2.7 twin turbo. Up to V8s of 3.7 and 4.2 liter of engine displacement, ranging pretty much from Skoda up to the Volkswagen Phaeton, Audi A8 or twin-turbo Audi R6. They stopped making them around the time when the direct injection came along, most likely for the space issues. If you ever ask yourself why there are no more than 5 valves per cylinder, the reason is quite simple. Although Maserati had great plans with their 6-valve engine, Yamaha tested and proved that a 6 and 7-valve setup has a negative impact on airflow and thus makes no sense to go beyond 5 valves. Even now the 4-valve setup is much more common as it combines the best of both worlds: relative simplicity and a great airflow through the engine. The 8-valve oval piston Honda NR series is a different topic. As always, thank you very much for watching this video. I believe you loved it watching it as much as I did making it. Feel free to type down any suggestion you have for any future video, and I will catch you in the next one. Cheers!